So this budget could be one of the most consequential budgets for a generation. So if you look at the UK economy and you take each component of the economy, you might actually take a view that each component seems to be performing quite well. Unemployment is roughly 4%. From an economic point of view, that's basically virtually full employment. Inactivity is a little bit higher, and it's higher than it was before the pandemic. But actually, if you look at this across countries, the UK has one of the most active workforces in the world. So on a labour market perspective, I would say that things are working pretty well with a couple of structural challenges, but that's not going to explain the low growth that we're seeing today. Inflation has been quite challenging, but it's been challenging for a lot of countries, and the UK inflation picture is looking much better today than it was previously, so I wouldn't put it down to that. So really, if you want to look at GDP and sort of try and get a picture on why it is more challenging, I think the answer to that is low business investment and low public investment. And if you think about business investment for a moment, what that really means is that firms across the country aren't investing in new capital, new technology, new factory equipment. I mean, put yourself in the position of a business owner. Would you want to invest in your own company in the UK if the government has just cut, say, a railway line between Birmingham and Manchester and not investing in a railway or just road infrastructure? You're going to be less likely to invest in your own technology. And if you don't invest in that technology, then growth into the future is going to be a lot lower. Today, we can look at GDP as something that's probably held back by previously low public and business investment. So you have this, what we call a bit of a doom loop, where you stop investing today. That means that growth is lower tomorrow. And if growth is lower tomorrow, that means it's harder to borrow. And then you get stuck in this cycle. And that is very much the cycle that the UK is in today. So the big question here is, how do you solve the UK economic problem? This is really a question of how do you get investment growing? How can the Chancellor come to the dispatch box and say, I'm going to invest in HS3, 4 and 5, the kind of capital projects that we would need to get the economy growing again? That is really a question of borrowing. And at the moment, borrowing is constrained. And the reason borrowing is constrained is because we have these fiscal rules that essentially mean that you have to have debt to GDP falling within a 5-year window. And if you don't invest in your economy, your GDP is not going to grow. So it may be that you can get sort of debt artificially down in the short term, but because it's debt to GDP, it means that GDP is not moving into the future. And as a result, the Chancellor today has slender fiscal headroom, basically no headroom at all. So really what we need to be doing is fixing those firm foundations that the government has talked about, which is going to be about changing fiscal rules to try and enable a bit more investment spending. A lot of economists, including those at the IMF, have said that the UK really needs to look at taking investment out of fiscal rules. And what's been suggested so far, what's been rumoured, is that the Chancellor is going to change the definition to just make it a little bit easier to invest. So at this budget, this is why I think we're going to see a really consequential budget, one that could have an impact on future generations, more so than we typically see at a budget, is because of these changing debt rules. So they're looking at it's a very technical change. It's really just looking at what is considered an asset, what's a liability. The upshot is that it will just generally be easier to invest based on that change. And once you get investment up, then you can get growth going into the future. I think no matter what, if you look at the future of the UK economy, you will see a necessity to raise taxes. This is something that lots of political parties were criticised for during the election campaign, for not talking about what taxes that we need to raise. The Conservative government made it quite clear that they were going to reduce spending into the future, even further than they had during the sort of 2010 period, to try and justify tax cuts and the kind of policies that they wanted to promote. And the new Labour government have come in and they haven't really built up a mandate for justifying which taxes to cut or which taxes to raise. And as a result of that, they will produce an idea like, let's increase national insurance contributions from employers. And as a result of that, people are saying, well, I don't want to raise my taxes. You didn't say that was going to be a feature of this economy. And unfortunately, we haven't had that sort of big, wider conversation with the public, I think, which is investment being low means that we need to get it up. And that's going to have to come from somewhere.
We have to fix the foundations so that we can build a better future. And that's tough. That's difficult. But that's why we're taking the decision on Wednesday to do it, because it's the right thing to do, and it's the right thing for our country.
The sort of services that we're seeing today are not in a good position, and making budget cuts on top of that is not necessarily something that governments want to do. So there has to be a conversation about which taxes that we're going to raise, and not enough groundwork was done during the election to try and find a solution to that. And that's why I think people are a bit surprised. I would want to be Rachel Reeves if I had the sort of support from the public to take those tough choices. I think that is the hardest part about being Chancellor right now. It's all well and good saying that you have tough choices, but you don't have the public on side to take those tough choices. Then I really don't envy that position at all. How you get the public on side to start thinking about what taxes to raise, to start trusting you in the fact that if you change, technical definitions of debt and spending rules, that they're broadly going to believe that you're doing it for the right reasons. But if you don't have that, those tough choices are going to become infinitely harder.